The real deals are on the air now. And now, live from the Swords of St. Michael Studios, it's The Real Deals. Kenneth and Pharaoh's Deel. Okay, it is The Real Deals tonight, -1, as Farrah is on assignment. This is what Deb usually on assignment, right, Deb? Hopefully she's there. Deb! Oh, wait a minute. Where is she at? Deb? Deb, hello. Wait a minute. I got the new Skype installed today. And should I expect this? No, it says she's still there. Okay, she'll pop in at some point. I suppose. I hope. Okay, hello to everybody in the chat room on The Real Deals chat room YouTube. Tonight we're going to talk about something different than we originally planned because A, Farrah's not here. B, we were going to launch the LNM radio network first night show, and we postponed it to get more advertising up, some technical glitches, and make sure, I don't know if you call them glitches or not. Something just needs to be configured a little different for the better. But the show will just be like any other show if you're watching YouTube, unless you're joining the LNM radio network, the podcast at the lnmnetwork.com. It's got a little more versatile shows, and there will be simulcasting to that. And it'll be this time next week while we run our live show here on YouTube. So look for that. And we're going to use as sort of a launching pad. We're going to talk about our cases in more depth. I got somewhere, where did that? I wrote ones that I'm probably going to use, and then Farrah's got some of her own before we even met. And it'll be more than an hour show. We're not going to do more than an hour show. It'll just be, the usual hour, like 10 minutes over or something like that. And then fill the rest of the second hour up. That's for the LNM network. Up with maybe videos of past interviews or something like that with Father Gary Thomas or something like that. We'll probably get him on live at some point anyway with a brand new show. So let's check and see where we are. Let's see here. Where are we at now on this? I'm producing and hosting and apparently alone on this show right now because I don't see Deb anywhere. Where are you at, Deb? Got silent all of that time, and I just thought she does what she usually do. She went to get the housekeeping done or something. She kills time a little bit before the show. I call her about 1:15. We can't spend too much time on that because the show must roll on. It's only an hour or so, and that is too fast. Okay, let's go back into here, and we'll start our St. Michael prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. St. Michael, the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the malice and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, and we humbly pray. And do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the divine powers of God, cast into hell Satan and all the other evil spirits who roam to the world, seeking to ruin the souls. Amen. Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, have mercy on us. Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, have mercy on us. Okay. I did realize, too, let me get this up here where I can get it closer, that we had a couple of things that were not addressed that were on the list. I'm going to leave anybody hanging, not that they're hot topics or anything. And there's the two of them right there that are unchecked that we did not answer in the previous episodes of the special Ask a Demonologist Q&A. We're going to do a live version of this show, and we're going to put the chat room right in the middle, where the questions will come primarily from the chat room in a couple of weeks, before Christmas. Well, they'll scroll in real time, and we've tried that before with Facebook and some of these others, the F word, and it was very slow. It was very delayed. I think you waited like over 5 minutes, and then you'd see suddenly your text show up on the screen. And so we're going to answer these two real quick, and hope Deb somehow gets a hold of me or whatever. I don't know what's going on. Let me see if my phone's even on. I don't see it. Okay. All right. The first one is, bless their grandkids. One of the wonderful things about Father Chad Ripperger is that he came out there to take over on the other parts of the country. As we've been talking about all of these things for a long time. Everything is relevant to spiritual warfare. sometimes we don't go into this thing that most all the preachers talk about spiritual warfare. It's this temptation, like spiritual warfare. Should I have another piece of cake, or is that considered gluttony? That's what the other denominations go on the topics about. They never got in depth like we did on these topics. And Father Chad and then Father Gary, Father I don't know, to some degree Fortea. It's a lot of that stuff he's in his book is basic. Father Gabriel Morth in his books, but we're mainly talking about the speakers. Father Chad's got a lot of these intricate questions, and it was nice to hear these things concurred about, because I didn't read all the books that Father Chad did. I don't have a PhD. But we do have, a very long time, over 40 years of wasting time being a nerd and this kind of stuff. I'm not going to say wasted time, because look what we're doing now. But I think I wasted time on a few other things, like game development, a very difficult business to stay in. You see people losing their livelihood on those investments just because of the industry changes again. That happened in the early 2000s. Okay, anyway, I don't want to bore you. All right. Bless your grandkids. Well, this is one of those things, that hierarchy thing. It's like, okay, if we go to a house, I can't bless somebody because I'm not their pastor, I'm not their priest, I'm not their father. Blessing the grandkids, there's still a hierarchy there, but it's not as potent as the parent, the maternal parent. The grandkids all over them, it'll still work, but it doesn't mean, let's see, mom, and then grandma, oh man, she's more powerful. I mean, it works that way with the church. You go up in the ranks and stuff. What did I see? Oh, okay, well, she just gave me a message. Let's see what Deb said. Can I hear you, but you can't hear me? Deb, what'd you mess with that for? All right, hold on a minute. Let's try to call her back. End call. No, I just updated Skype tonight. You know why? Because they forced me to. It says you can't use Skype anymore unless I update. So there I did, and there's the results. Yeah, they just release stuff buggy all the time. And now it won't even dial her back in. Updating conversation? I'm clicking the phone icon. Okay, there it goes. Okay. We'll let that go on and spare the formalities. Deb Johnson, Dublin, Connecticut case. A good friend of ours.
Hello?
Okay, there you are, Deb. Oh, my gosh. That's what's hard about being the lone man. I'm like the guy with the, the drum on his back and I
was on the whole time.
Yeah, I know, but I couldn't call you.
I had to literally hang up so you can call me back.
No, I should have went to a commercial, but I can't use my commercial. I got to use it in the middle of the show. I'm an old guy. I might have to go to the bathroom or something. My gosh.
I didn't miss a word you said.
Yeah. You can hear me okay, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I was just going over 2 last Ask a Demonologist questions, and then we're going to go over Jordan Ammons. He's the one who, you could say, is a Thomas Aquinas. Yeah, and he died in the 70s, and he wrote some good books. Jordan Ammon, Spiritual Theology is one we're going over, and it's extraordinary and ordinary diabolical. And you can contribute to this list. I think you experienced all the extraordinary almost. And if we did, yeah, so you can just say, hey, I don't know, jump in at any time. Okay, I was talking about bless the grandkids.
Thanks. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. Blessing the grandkids has to do with the family hierarchy of who's really spiritually in charge over the children, and the mom and dad are more in charge. Now, if the mother or father dies, it does allocate up. It's just the way it works. The funny thing about this stuff is, when you read about this, you talk about it, I don't really mention it unless I saw it in action, because it's amazing. It's like for us, for example, that me and the wife going to places, and then people like, some people give us a hard time because we're laity, is what they would call, but we're professed laity. We're Third Franciscan. We got the same, special Franciscan guardian angel, that you get when you get professed, that a monk or poor cleric gets, and all that stuff. I mean, so we have the benefits, but we have a different calling. We're not, in the cloister. See, by praying as much as a Franciscan who's a monk, and doing the daily habits, you can get the same graces and be in the same, we'll just call it spiritual status or whatever, that a monk or a nun can have, because they could even profess to if they're not married, of course, to be chaste and all that stuff. So anyway, it is if to bless the grandkids, they won't have the potency. There's some there, and it's not going to be better. It's the ghost hunter comes over. No, anybody but your parish priest in your district. That's like your personal spiritual leader, and your church in your town, whichever one you go to. And then above him, of course, is the bishop. Below him is the deacon. I mean, deacons are allowed to bless people, but not transubstantiate, the communion and all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to stay on that one too long. But that's what it has to do with, is like husbands and wives in the house, and you can bless your own house. You can bless your kids. That's your house. That's your kids. The husbands bless the wife. Wife blesses the kids. Whatever. Spiritual warfare demands is different. If you go over there, and you're the grandmother, and you the only one who seems to be of faith, and you do a deliverance on your grandkid, that demon might run out. We don't know. There's a lot of variables in play there, a lot of gray areas, so to speak. But okay, I want to move to the next one, so we don't stay on this all night. Solomon's Ring of Power. Should I go over that one? That's almost I don't know. I'm tired of talking about that. It's so ridiculous.
Are you skipping around over here, Ken?
No. Now we got 2 left on the whole list. They're all X'd up. If you were here earlier, now you were here, you just couldn't talk. Be nice to Deb.
Go to Solomon's Ring of Power.
Solomon's Ring of Power. I think I started talking about it on a solo episode podcast that I did lately, but you can look for it. It's a few videos back, just 1 or 2. And basically, Solomon's Ring of Power is supposed to have what's called Solomon's Seal. That's the supposed Star of David, which not was the Star of David until the Rothschild's house. There's no Star of David anywhere. All the archaeological ruins, they never found it. And that's a known fact. If you look around and if you read the biased ones that want to promote that's true, yeah, you're going to see it. The guys who love the, Keys of Solomon and stuff. But it wasn't. It was called the hexagram still, the intersecting triangles. Hexagram, hex. Where do you think the word to hex comes from? Which is, people pretty much consider that as the same thing as to curse you. Not cursing you like but curse you like putting a spell on you kind of thing. So it already has a negative background. If it's associated with King Solomon in some sense, I reminded people in that video that King Solomon was a fallen one. Like, you could say David's predecessor, who conjured up Samuel's ghost, the Witch of Endor story, King Saul. So on the Ring of Power and the Solomon's Seal, as they call it, has a circle around it. You know how they put a circle around pentagrams and stuff, so it has some potency. And some of the craft, they use those things for spawning points. Sometimes you step in the middle of them and you draw down a salt circle or something, and you're supposed to be protected from the spirits that you conjure up. It varies a little bit. But don't correct me on any of that stuff, because the demonology we talk about isn't occult demonology. It's how to beat them, how to get rid of them, how to, do something positive, into separating yourself, unlike Solomon, from, we'll just say, kind of the darkness in the gray area. There's no gray shades in the afterlife. There's only evil, and total good. In the world, people mix that together like Solomon. I don't know if Solomon's in hell or not, but he certainly made himself a candidate. A big part he made a mistake was with inviting 600 wives into his life to be his wives. And I was thinking like that one day, how he's going to have to take care of 3 a day just to get every woman her time with him. We'll just say intimacy. And only each woman only get him 1 time a year. There's like 600 very unhappy women. And he got a mix. Yeah. He looked at somebody. He didn't care. You look good. Doesn't matter. He didn't ask if you believe in God, probably. So guys, just stay away from this stupid Ring of Power stuff. There's no truth. And stay away from the Keys of Solomon, lesser and greater keys. Stay away from the Book of Enoch. It's been known for a long time to be created around the like medieval times or something. And the scientists trying to prove where it comes from and if it exists. And people say at the best that it's Gnostic. That means where you had those neo-pagan supposed Christians who believed that Jesus was some kind of deity, but they didn't recognize him as the Son of God. And they started infiltrating, the scriptures. And so when they got the bishops together during Constantine in Nicaea, Constantine's time, Constantine assembled it. That they were together so long that someone finally said, "Hey, we've been here for 6 months." That's like Congress. 6 months trying to, weed out the bad Bibles. But let me tell you what, some of them, like the Book of Enoch, left immediately. They were so simple. If you read through there and you really know, well, I'm a certified Dicey certified catechist, which is a longer course. It's not like you go to your priest and you go for 3 weeks. It's about 6-8 months. But that just kind of solidifies what they did in the process. They took it very seriously. They're not going to just throw out a book. The only ones who threw out the books was Luther at his time, and he started throwing them out and called them Apocrypha. The original older text had many books, never had. It's not a lost Bible. It's not a lost Bible part. It's not a lost book. The Book of Enoch has just kind of been inserted in there, and it's like, just throw everything off, and it's so bizarre. Demons are not the offspring. When we say demons in spiritual warfare, we mean demons that are, basically in definition, which is a Latin word. You can go to Wikipedia and all that stuff, and it doesn't tell you what it is. It's the fallen angels. That's what we're talking about, what we're dealing here. We're not talking about some supposed ghost created from some unnatural, unholy union that came between supposedly the fallen angels. They called them watchers and all this other stuff. And they came upon women like they have physical bodies, and like God gave them seed. He doesn't. What demons cannot create. They can't create anything. You know what I mean by creation? Who can make up new things and create them from scratch? Well, man has some of that gift. God, but the angels lost that when they fell from heaven. All they can do is distort. They can bring two things together. They make a new creature. They'll give it a head of a giraffe, and a body of a dog. Who knows? But there is no creativity in that. But I can go on, and I did a little bit more in that video, so you guys can go look for it. Deb, you still?
Are you taking any questions?
Hey, yeah, get some questions. I can't even see the chat room at the moment. Yeah, pop them in.
That's why I wish Sister Farrah was here. Spa Diva wants to know, what about receiving a blood transfusion with someone else's blood, and then they become sick, like all the time? Can that be fixed?
Well, if it's spiritual, they have to find out. The doctors did blood tests, and they can find out the physical, I guess. But yeah, spiritually, this is something else the Exorcist will talk about too. And Forte, I talk about the American ones more. I know I can understand their English. I couldn't understand Gabriel Moore's a sneak of English in there. He's deceased too. It is that when you some of the people, when you're a kid, you did that thing they used to call it blood brothers, like you're doing something a Native American does. That's where you cut your hand, and then you do this kind of thing, that masculine thing.
Finger, yeah.
Yeah,
we're
not brothers.
We've all done that as kids.
You're not supposed to do that, even when you have, intimacy.
I know, but I did it as a kid too.
Yeah, but you are sharing blood a little bit, because all it needs is just a little bit, and have intention.
Yep.
If it has intention and knowledge that it's from another person, it's a little more.
Yeah.
But the reality is, do you remember those movies where it was like the hand, started coming to life, and he's fighting it? He got it as a transplant. Turns out it came from some convict who got hanged. He finds out later. I think they had more than one on that. The crawling hand.
Hearing
oh my gosh, did that happen on that one movie, Evil Dead 2 or something? I don't know. He cut it off with a chainsaw and it's attacking him and stuff. Nothing like that. I just mean that it's like it was the idea that it's haunted and it has a mind of its own. It's not going to be exactly like that, but you just merge your blood with a murderer, and you're going to suffer it just as the same as when you have, don't go laying down with a sorcerer or whatever, practicing the black arts, because you're going to get their demons on you too. So you have to essentially do breaking curses prayers. And I'd say I'd do them for 9 days. They're on our website, swordsofsaintmichael.org. And you can do those. Do prayer 1 and prayer 2. It's on the prayers list. You can do those and renounce that if you did a blood brother pack. If you got a blood transfusion, you're going to renounce the blood transfusion? No. You're just going to do it. And then, as long as you next time you go to confession, that'll pretty much wrap it up, because you'll get blessed again, and along with your confession penance and your consuming.
I think I did that when I was about 7 or 8 years old.
Mm-hmm. Then
and I didn't have any brothers back then, because I was the only child for 11 years.
Yeah. Yeah, you were really young too. You were below 12, so that plays a part too. Yeah, sometimes you don't have a choice. That's the unfortunate thing about it, is that like we contaminate ourselves getting next to a person, and you feel awful when you've been on an elevator, or even, but sometimes worse when you've been on a bus, a train, and you're sitting next to someone who's evil. You're going to feel very off. You're going to have nightmares. You don't pray it off. You're going to have nightmares that night, and not sleep well even. I mean, a lot of things can happen like that. Hope that answers it. Good enough.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
From Zilma. She wants to know, what about bringing someone else's mirror to your house, like buying an antique or something like that, or if you got one from a tag sale?
Yeah, you can bless it and just be on the safe side. And if nothing happens, experiences, and don't psych yourself out, because you're going to make yourself have dreams and stuff and get scared of it. Because antique ones are kind of creepy, because all the movies had really cool antique ones. Even that Lost in Space episode where there's really long one, and it's like a portal to the other dimension. And I think Penny Robinson gets trapped in that, and it's got these heads on it, and they snort. You smoke out of them, you know, when the portal opens up. But yeah, we kind of been programmed that these things are unnatural. No thanks to Constantine. I don't mean the Emperor. I mean the movie. Don't worry about Constantine later on if I get bored. But you can even have a regular full-length mirror, and that one might even be something. But it's not as much. It's kind of rare. But you know, we're told that when we bring something from a garage sale, you like garage sales too, you find the cool and cheap stuff there. I mean, cheap as in hardly any money. And you should always bless that stuff, because you don't know what might have been in there. Yeah,
I do.
Something so innocent that doesn't really have occult use or whatever, just in proximity of that. Let's say they had a black mass in this place they used to be in, a chair or something. And then
I could even go to a thrift store if I pick up something that, like I like old furniture, and because I like redoing furniture.
Yeah.
And
cool.
I carry the holy water in the car with me, because I'll bless it as soon as I put it into the car, you know, even before I put it in the car.
Yeah, that's smart. See, even I don't remember to do that, because we kind of forget when
I
it's
do,
innocent.
and I've learned that from my mother.
Oh, yeah, well, that was good. Good mothers.
Yeah.
But on the other thing is, too, is that it can go in degrees, too, not proximity, but if somebody actually practices speculum in a full-length bathroom mirror, you know, the way, try to predict the future, or to see your spirit guide, or any of those kind of things. What's the other one called again? It's
scrying?
Oculum? Or I don't know what it is. There's another word for it, too. Scrying. Speculum, scrying, whatever, that kind of thing. But yeah, just bless it.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes if you haven't had your priest over a while to bless your house, have them bless that and say, hey, could you bless this mirror while you're at it too? And it's like, okay, you know. I mean, have them over for dinner, you know, make it worth his while. Not that you need to do that, though. But we should have priests over at least once a year in this day and age. The things that we bring in, the people, the things that we experience, you never know, especially if you have teenagers in the house. Okay.
We have another question, Ken.
Okay.
How long can holy water repel demons when you bless your own house? How long does it take, average, for demons to come back? That would probably depend on the demon, on the person.
Oh, I know. Yeah, exactly right. Because if you have something small, like a sound's waking you up in the middle of the night, and it's the same time every night, you could probably properly bless your house just once, and you won't see it for another week. But that's assuming you don't have an object in there, or something else that's still working, or like you said, the potency of the demon. The ones that we said that often are dealt with that do small things, you know, and they run off easy when you say Jesus' name, like the sleep paralysis ones. Those seem to be easier to get rid of, because most they wouldn't leave so easy. They want to hold you as long as possible to freak you out and make them think it's going to take something really big, like the Pope, to bless it and get it off you. But when they run away like a scared child, you know, running away from a mean dog, and you just said, you know, in the name of Jesus Christ, what? You know, and they're gone. I mean, that's obviously not, how much of a strategy are they going to get away with on that, pretending to be more scared than they are? They're too proud anyway. So, I don't know. I would just say, pay attention the next 3 days, and then do it, and repeat it as necessary, depending on how bad. You remember what we're talking about tonight? This is perfect for it, too, is the extraordinary and ordinary diabolical activity. if you have extraordinary diabolical activity, you're probably going to do a lot more as the owner, and you need to get a priest involved so that you're protected, so that you have that extra edge. I know there's a lot of times we have a Burger King drive-through of a ministry that we've had over 1,000 cases that had just been by the phone, and not saying take 2 aspirins and call in the morning, but we have a formula specific to each problem they have, and then they call us back and say, hey, it worked, write us back, or they don't call us back at all, and that's a good sign. Because I told them to call us back if you need something more, and I'm sure they would take the invitation if I can send them St. Benedict medals, but that's a good thing. That means,
definitely.
Yeah, can you imagine if they had over-the-counter drugs for just about everything? Like that. Instead, it's like less and less are out there so that you can buy the next drug that's going to basically almost take your life with a bunch of other symptoms that are totally unrelated. But hey, let's run into our commercial breaks that we didn't start so much with, and then we'll come right back and then we'll resume. We're going to go past the top of the hour a little bit to compensate for that. So we'll be right back. Formerly Demonology Today Radio, as Deb used to be with the old show. The Real Deals continues. We'll be right back. This is Kenneth Deel along with my wife, Farrah Rose Deel, and we're going to talk to you real quick about our books. So we have 5 books available right now and 1 on deck. The books are the Catholic Demonologist Handbook along with the Workbook and Study Guide, and the Christian Demonologist Handbook along with the Workbook and Study Guide. And that's for all denominations. Well, we also have the Haunting Self-Help Guidebook.
Any and all of these books are going to help direct you to not just the natural causes, prevention, prayers to assist you, to keep you and your family protected.
Yes, real solutions done by real people in the field. And we're sharing our knowledge and information to help you help yourself, or help a friend or a client if you're in the field yourself.
www.swordofstmichael.org.
You can buy the books direct and get them personally signed. Okay, we are back. I don't like those non-fade out things. I'm gonna have to get that set for the mixer. I like that when it rolls in, like when the other thing's rolling out. All right, so there was another question, Deb?
I'm looking. I don't see one right now.
Okay. All right, so.
But in the chat room, people, just write your question down, and I'll throw it out there to Ken.
Yeah, Deb's overloaded tonight too. She's like got full chat room duty and full co-host duty, and then a phone that didn't work for a minute there for whatever reason. Blame it on Skype. This is a different manuscript as far as the the compiling of it is. I got it off an ebook, but a spiritual theology by Jordan Amen. For you, Father Chad Rippinger fans out there, he's referred to a lot. Father Amen basically is doing what Father Chad did. He put St. Thomas Aquinas, into more of a kind of a layman's terms perspective. In a lot of ways, that's what we do. That I've always been bad with terminology, even in psychology. So I don't, I'm like, okay, finally I remember what's the name of that thing on the altar that holds the hosts, the monstrous. Those things don't stick with me very well, just like names don't. I can remember the faces. I know you, like that. But that's just me. I got my limits and I got my pluses and stuff, and that's one of them. But this book has in a section. It's not a bad for the details, but it's definitely ahead of its time. The types of spirits, and it's on page 284. And down on the bottom, it'll say the following characteristics or general signs of a divine spirit. And then you go over here and it says, hold on a minute. This bookmark's actually getting in the way. And where is that? Okay, just a minute.
Ken, you're all thumbs tonight.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, signs of a diabolical spirit. And it's like I should have underlined it, but I don't like writing in books. It was literally... it's this other bookmark's not even marked on the right page. Somebody probably took it out accidentally and put it back in. You know how people do that. I'm too meticulous to have that happen. Perfect. I don't know. Gift of understanding. This is like something about these gifts of the Holy Spirit. So it's in here somewhere. This is what I should have done during the break. I apologize, ladies and folks. All right. Okay, but I'll just mention what's in there. So, ordinary diabolical activity, diabolical obsession. They got kind of a nice little description of diabolical oppression, obsession, possession, remedies for possession, and here's what they have here. This is why people like us come along. We add on to these things: sacramental confession, Holy Communion, fasting and prayer, the sacramentals, the cross. The ritual prescribes that the exorcist should have a crucifix in his hand and before his eyes. It has been verified many times that the devil will flee merely at the sight of a crucifix. When we were talking earlier, Deb, the ones that react to Jesus' name, it wouldn't be a possession so easy. I would say it has more to do with how saintly the person is, perhaps, that they don't want to deal with what's coming next. And it just says relics of the saint. We have a bunch of those, including the relic of the true cross. That one you can use in the blessing of Saint Mar. The holy names of Jesus and Mary. Yes, Mary. They don't like when it says the Blessed Virgin Mary. And the demons had said that in the possessions during it. Signs of a diabolical spirit. Spirits of falsity. The devil is the father of lies, but he cleverly conceals his deceit. Half-truths and pseudo mystical phenomenon. What's that, the stupid phone? Oh, no. Did I lose you, or did stupid...
No, I'm here.
Skype made some goofy noise. Yeah.
Oh, no. That was my phone. I just got a text from somebody. I turned the volume down.
I haven't updated Skype in like 2-3 years. I rolled it back to the old one, and now then it forced me. Yeah, I might have to look it up in the index. Oh my gosh. That was in there before, and I just saw it last week. I was going to do this show in the last week. All right, let's just see what it's in here, okay? Sorry about that, folks. I'll cut this out in the archive or something. I'm like, oh, boy. Prayer, aid to spiritual growth. That's a horrible index. I don't see anything related to spiritual warfare in that part. How did they end up on diabolical activity? And this is the right book. The other one's comb-bound. Oh, what's the use? Practice it.
You'll find it as soon as we hang up.
Oh, I know. That's the way it works. Well, it was good. So that's what just like so off about that. Types of spirits. Yeah, I don't even want to be. Why am I in the discernment of spirits section? Oh, wait, I found it. Guess what? I just flipped it randomly, and I found it on the first page. So when I'm in this caught in this thing, I don't even think to pray to get this little help. Say anything, help me find this. Okay, so, like my glasses are all fogged up. Hey! Okay, we'll go down here. With God's permission, the devil can do any of the following, and I don't know at this point if it's actually considered extraordinary activity, but I'm going to say probably, as we read, we'll know if we don't figure it out in itself. A purpose, let's see, produce corporeal or imaginative visions, not intellectual visions. Oh, he can do any of the following. Imaginative visions, not intellectual visions. Okay, well, You know, when they tempt you with memories straight out of your head, like it's a video playing in your head of when you were there, like some sort of virtual reality encounter of the past. And that's how they tempt you. You know, I mean, people can be tempted for a number of reasons, even a strong memory, like Vietnam flashbacks or something from PTSD. Maybe they had, you know, they're in your head that way. We've had certain indications that such a thing is true.
Ken, we have sort of a little question here.
Okay.
Somebody works with a lady, and she is Wicca or witch, and she said she will pray for me at this time. I didn't know she was Wicca. The next day I was so sick. Could her praying to Mother Goddess Venus cause this?
Yeah, unfortunately. They're not compatible, and it's the same as putting a curse on somebody. You know, because there's always something that they have to get back. If you make a deal with a spirit that, you know, is not of heaven, that they take something in return for it. There's always something to pay. There's always a price to pay, and that's why pharmaceuticals are so strange. That every pharmaceutical has that same kind of attribute element. That when you get this cure, supposedly, and it helps you live longer without the symptoms of this, but some of the symptoms is you may die of sudden death. So you got to be ready for the consequences. And if you're Christian, fully in, you're gonna get kind of a payback. But what can you do? Tell them how do you tell somebody to politely? That's when my wife, which she's a protocol droid, politely. Oh no, please don't pray for me. It's not. I don't even know how to say that. You know, but it happens in the past. They do it when they don't tell you. But she didn't know, and she can't. It's not her. It's not anything that she did as the person to receive it, but she should treat it like it's a curse initially. It's also possible that she just might have gotten sick by default, more sick, and it had nothing to do with it. Because I hadn't really noticed when people said they'll pray for me, it actually got worse or anything like that. So if all people, I mean, I had curses put on me, and I seen it in the forums, and people pointed it out, and they said exactly what it was. And, oh, really? When did that happen? Oh, last December? And it's like, I don't remember anything. You know what I mean? It's... that realistically it's not supposed to do anything unless it's God's permissible will. In other words, you're going to learn something and you're going to get something positive from it that you need for your goal, the ultimate goal of heaven. But that's something we do just as precautions. Like when we buy something, we can say, I'm a Christian. You know, this antique deck of tarot cards that I have in my display case shouldn't do anything. I mean, you know, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Kind of like the blood transfusion thing too. Kind of goes to that you can be... have that transfusion, and you may not have anything to do, but we just do things in precaution so they don't pile up and end up as something, you know, where you give it cents here and there, and the next thing you know, it's over $1. Yeah, because I don't want to default back and go, what happened? Just a lot of little things, hundreds. And what are we going to go find them and do scavenger hunt to clear our house because we got a little loose because we like the kind of the cool looking Dungeons and Dragons looking daggers and stuff that Wicca sometimes has, and those type of things, you know, can be tempting. And some beautiful Ouija boards out there. You see the old ones with it looks like a real beautiful picture frame around the edge and all that stuff. And it looks like they routed out the letters and then filled it in with some kind of glaze, you know, and then waxed it. And I mean, that's the kind of the thing. It's a lot of beautiful witches out there. It doesn't mean you marry them or let them seduce you either.
Ken, yesterday Alan sent me a picture that he found on the internet, and it was of a beautiful hardwood floor in somebody's living room, and they had a full Ouija board put on it.
Wow!
Talk about a party with that. Floor Ouija board was professionally done.
You know, Ed Warren said once, you're kind of like your second father, Ed was, to you because he was such a godsend and your whole family was in turmoil. There was nobody else available at the time, so we can only say so much about the Warrens. They helped Deb, our good friend, out back in the 80s in a way no one else could on one of the worst cases I've ever heard in history. But he said that it's just a piece of wood with, what is it, masonite and a pressed sticker. And I said, no. I mean, I didn't say it then. I wasn't around to contradict him in the 80s. but I did in the 90s, and I did, and since then. But in all due respect, even the book, that I wrote, the first book, I put that in there. But I did it in all due respect, because he did get a lot of people started, and there was nothing else out there. Gerald told me one day, he said that I got this big fat check. It was around the time we had our show, and it was a royalty check because a university had a conference, and they had priests there, and they were using the demonologists to reference cases and demonology and applied conditions, case studies. And I thought, wow, it was like a 200 or something like that. I don't know how many it was, but it was a bigger convention like that one they have every once in a while, where they have some of the priests and exorcists. We'll probably be at one of those one day. We just we haven't looked for them, and we'll probably be doing it on behalf of the diocese and the state first. The first thing we'll get to. But that's
Ken,
not true.
you have a question here.
Uh-huh.
If you want to take this, it says, Brother Kenneth, what do you think of Medjugorje?
Oh, Medjugorje, I don't know. I shouldn't. Funny how many
If you
problems
don't
talking
want
about
to
Garabandal.
discuss that on this show tonight, you could always do it another night.
Yeah, we have an old episode of the radio show. Well, let me just start with this. Like Garabandal I'm just going to mention a few things there. We have a town here near Springfield, and it's called Cuba, Missouri. There's a church up there, a Catholic church. And the boy in that group, he came there to speak about the apparitions, the visions, and to basically, pray and like as Mary would appear to him, and I don't know if people pay attention to the second part. I really expected it. I didn't go. I didn't hear how heavy it was for a crowd and all that stuff. But what happened was let's see, did that one have the basketball game? Because I know somebody else that had something like that. Was he went through the whole thing, and then when he's done, he just went over and kneeled down, and then the Blessed Mother appeared to him. Of course, nobody saw it, but he put on the routine as though he really seen it, like the other gal does. It's blonde, who's still in the country over there, Yugoslavia or whatever it is. And I think that's rather odd that, suddenly you have this thing like that Star Trek angel, friendly angel, come to me. Remember those kids working in a circle and just demonic, pretending to be an angel, even though they didn't use those words in the movie or in the Star Trek, old Star Trek with Captain Kirk, was played by William Shatner. I think some of the people who know that show know that episode, and I always thought that's true because sometimes, even back then, my mom and dad knew about these topics when I was a kid. So we had a weird family growing up. We knew about all these apparitions. But then another place, one of them showed up, and I think the boy is traveling more, into the States and stuff, and the other one's backed off. He went to this one place, and it's scheduled, and so what he did was they had a basketball game, and then they went into overtime, and first they had to delay the date of the appearance for him, and the Blessed Mother apparently too. And then when the basketball game was going into overtime or something like that, as I remember, and so then it was delayed like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Luckily it was an afternoon game. So then he goes in there and he does the same thing again. He just talks about it, and then he gets down on the knees, and then suddenly, it's like, there she is. She just, did like Darth Vader kneeling down, and then suddenly the Emperor appears up on this. People are going to get mad at me for this, but I'm just asking the questions. Don't you think that on-demand Blessed Mother visitations is rather odd on any level, or anybody, or any saint, or anything? That is just conjuring. Isn't so one way or another? I've never heard it in history. It's not in the catechism. It's not in any of the approved apparitions. It's still not approved. So I think the bottom line maybe is to be very careful on ones that aren't approved. We were talking about Bayside, Deb. We'll talk about that on some other time. I'm still looking into some things. But I find out that the traditional Catholics swing to, sometimes the SSPX and the people who are going to the traditional Latin Mass, great bunch of people, and even the SSPX, the Sedi Vacantis, they believe in Garabandal. And I know definitively it's demonic. I've looked over it a long time. My mother and father followed it since the beginning and dumped it. And I remember when I was seeing the video when I was a kid, and I said, that looks demonic. They're walking backwards. Now we have this kid that he ran up the wall that Jack Baggins, I might as well say Jack. Zach Baggins, he bought that house, and that was the house where the kid became possessed, and he walked backwards up the wall right in front of the, what do you call, the social services worker. And back then when I saw it, I said, this is bizarre. They're walking down this rocky hill backwards with their neck cocked at 45-degree angle, 90-degree angle. And there's a lot of stuff, and we did a show on that, Deb, as you remember. And that's on our Real Deals page here. Type in Gare Bandel in the search. And yeah, the one is more like the post 1960s is Medjugorje people, and then the ones other than that is the Gare Bandel that don't really follow the I don't know what they call the modernism of Vatican II, and you'll get them divided on that thing there too. For some reason. They still cling to that, and if they had discernment, they would know Gare Bandel. And I go, what about Padre Pio? Well, we have one of our traditional priests who said Padre Pio got it wrong, but all he did was tell Joey Limagino, I think his name was, something like that, the guy who was blind, is they told him, Padre Pio said, why not? He said, you think I should go to Gare Bandel? And Padre Pio said, why not? Padre Pio cured his nose smell, but it didn't cure his eyes. He did prayer, and he tapped on his forehead, and he got his smelling back. And then he's on the way to Gare Bandel. He never got his smelling back, even though he was told, what do you call it, smelling? Oh, yeah, now he smells again. Sorry. I don't come up with the right words and it flies so fast. I talk like Ben Shapiro, and then I start to sound hillbillish or whatever. But I don't know. I don't have my that hemisphere of the brain as well developed to communicate what's on the other side of the brain as I'd like to have. But the point is that the signs are all there if you'd really look. And I think that's why people need discernment. That's why they get mixed up with phony priests and stuff, is they really don't have discernment. Even if you're a psychic medium or whatever you call yourself, a sensitive, and you would know right away that, yeah, hey, this is wrong, or that person's wrong, or that kind of thing. We have to pray for that because we live in this world of deception, and it's so bad now that even fake, Blessed Mother. No, Gare Bandel was a spirit, but it was not a good one, because the proof that it was like supernatural, it was there, even if it was weaker in some areas compared to Fatima, for example. Medjugorje doesn't seem to have anything but post miracles. In other words, if you get a bunch of people who pray and gather at the same place, do a lot of rosaries, that can become a holy site. Not because allegedly Blessed Mother appeared there, but because all these people have gathered in large numbers in prayer to give reverence and honoring to the Mother of Jesus, and then celebrate Mass there, and all of that stuff that's positive is going on there. That site is going to be more significant, just as a site where there's a tree in a graveyard and Satanists and witches or whatever have been practicing around that tree their dark arts, that you don't even want to go near it, because you're going to have something the opposite of healing and miracles. It'll be called a curse just by crossing it. Plenty of stories. Even John Zaffis's friend Stacy had, I don't think it was Stacy, but I guess that's irrelevant. Her son, they went in a graveyard taking pictures. It was in the day, and he walked across some graveyards, grave in particular, and saw something as he did it. And after that, he ended up getting possessed. Not quick, but it happened gradually, but soon enough for her to point it to the graveyard. Something must have happened. So be careful when we go doing these kind of strange haunt tours or something, either it's because you love an old building like we do. Scooby-Doo building, Scooby-Doo hunting or something like that. So any other questions there might be, we'll take some more. We still got about 20 minutes left if you're able to hang on after the top of the hour, Deb.
Oh, yeah. I'm here. I was just trying to think what cemetery John was referring to. Is it in Connecticut?
Wow. Oh, I'm sure it was. I think it was a local friend. I don't think it was anybody.
And because I believe I've been to that cemetery myself. I went there to take pictures. I was by myself.
Yeah. It was an older one, obviously, because those are the better ones to take pictures of. And it didn't show the real one, because it was a... he had that one told on one of those haunting episodes, I think, too. But
yeah,
I remember that. I used that as a reference since it was well known back then. In 2000, I think it was out in 2006 or something, around the time your show.
You're right.
Demons Dwell.
And I went out there around that time.
Yeah, folks out there, Deb's episode of Haunting is called Where Demons Dwell. Actually, it was back in 2002, I think. Was it, Deb?
It came out in 2006.
2006. Oh, okay. And that was actually when I used to pay people for those episodes, and they looked harder for ones they thought were real, and eventually they're just taking anybody and anything now. You know, even the dog had a story, and row, 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 row. Oh, really interesting. Row, 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 row. Okay.
Yeah.
So as we were reading on, falsify ecstasy. We get this with some of the ancient and the recurrent. Falsifying ecstasy, that's where just because you feel intense joy doesn't mean it comes from God. Produce rays of light in the body and sensible heat. This is also called diabolical incandescence. This is another way they fool people into thinking that is a positive spirit, it's a positive effect, a feeling. They do that all the time. You really think that if they come in ugly, smelling, dark, and all that stuff, that you're going to want to be friends with them or anything like that, or even give them a time of day? And, you know, it's like the person said that the story about the good-looking gentleman dancing with everybody, and then a couple of people saw almost like a little bit of a trace of, like, fire in his steps, you know, like sparks or something. I don't know. And I don't even know if it's true, but it's kind of more of a metaphor, I suppose. And it was the best-looking place, and all the women were wooed by him. And the guy's just like, wow, you know, just like, I wish I could be like that. And it turns out he was the devil or something. And I don't even remember the details. You know why? Because I heard that from my aunts who were nuns way back when I was in, like, 3rd grade or something. And they usually repeated stories because you can hear stuff.
Yes, so your 2 aunts are a nun, and your uncle, is it your uncle who's a priest?
Yeah, I had Father Bill Forrest, and then his brother, Father Charles Forrest, and he was a Monsignor, and a bit of a mentor. I went on some retreats and stuff to see if I should be a priest or not. And I told a story once about that. My last retreat, I found out that it's embarrassing. I was 15 and I found out that Kiss was going to be on the Paul Lynde Halloween special. So I got really kind of, I don't know, I was rude that I wanted to get back because I didn't have TV there, so I could watch it. And so I went, and lo and behold, of course, later on I had a rock band during the MTV generation. Lynn State, at least they'd call them heavy metal hair bands then. All righty, so and then there's the bishop. The bishop too. His name was what was his first name? Robert, I think. Forrest, and he married my mother and father in the cathedral in St. Louis. He was a bishop here shortly in Springfield, but I did not live here then. I was in St. Louis. He was in Kansas City, and he retired some time ago, and then he died before the other two died. Father Charles died 2 summers ago, not last year, but the year before. I didn't even know it because Mom and Dad were passed. Unless they probably would have told me he's sick. Mom and Dad were already passed, so they actually died before he did. And they were on my grandpa's side of the family, and the other ones were on my mother's side. So, I mean my grandmother's side. Little interesting things. So, let's see. Demons cause sensible consolations and tenderness. This is, again, how they, so that's why you got to really be careful, and you really got to pray and test the spirit. You know, someone said that, well, you say Jesus' name, and then they'll flinch. But what you do is you don't get them. We had this one gal crying out for Jesus. It's like, oh, Jesus, please tell them to leave or something like that. I don't know, another thing, Jesus, help me or whatever. And then I remember some of these things that, the Bible says, and you can really go literally to the Bible on this. And then, when you test the spirit, try to get the person to declare that Jesus is the Son of God. It pains them more than just say Jesus. Say that Jesus Christ is the true Son of God. And if they can't say it, I mean, some of them will. The really high up ones can suck it up. They'll be like, Jesus Christ, they can just like suck up the pain. We know that because most they wouldn't get through the first part of an exorcism if that wasn't true. But you got to test the spirit with that. And if you're, the more you collaborate with these things, the more they're going to not have any problem with it, because you can walk into a church and get communion and everything and be a Satanist because of your collaboration with them. You're going to be, I'm not going to say bulletproof, but you make the spirit bulletproof by being the housing for them, so you don't have the reaction. The more unwilling you are to their presence, the more you're going to react to the sacred. At some point or another, it gets like what Malachi Martin said about perfect possession, but there's really no perfect possession. If you look theologically and all that, that's a little cute little term he made up. That, like we do. We have our Pharaohisms, I don't know, my-isms or whatever, and and Deb-isms, I don't know, to some degree.
So he would call it perfect possession?
Yeah, he called perfect possession like someone like a politician or somebody, like Damien.
Yeah.
Like Damien.
And that back in the time, in the early 80s, we had called it full-blown possession.
Full possession, right. Because partial possession not only could mean like some of you is possessed and you're not unconscious totally, but you're listening to your mouth talk like Tourette and just say all, I don't know, weird stuff. It could be obscene. It could be no cussing or anything in there, but you've lost control of your mouth. Some people woke up from sleeping like that, and it took 5 minutes for that to wear off, and they're listening to their mouth speak a foreign language, and then it turns out they were praising Satan. And that's not full possession, obviously. Most they wouldn't be able to get up and splash their face with cold water. But full possession would be like...
Just like if you think about it, Ken, some people go into a coma. If they were in an accident or something, they went into a coma.
Yeah.
And then when they come out of a coma, they're speaking a total different language, and they can't communicate with their family.
Yeah, and a linguist should be able to identify any language. And for me to explain that, I had to be a linguist. But it makes sense to me, just like mathematics does. I don't have to understand and know every aspect of mathematics on through calculus. We had to learn that in electronics. But there's certain elements, and if something's not a language, they're going to find that it doesn't have any elements of communication in there. So some of these things, when people become possessed and they just babble, they're just babbling. Sometimes they're making fun of you when you're praying when they're babbling. Like, yeah. It's kind of like saying that, if they're saying that and disrespecting.
When they're babbling or a language, that's not spoken.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I've heard cases that people, when they've come out of a coma, they speak a total different language. I don't care if it's German, Italian, Spanish, and then they can't communicate with their families.
Mm-hmm. And they stay that way, huh? Yeah.
I don't know if they stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how long it lasts.
Yeah, in my first book, I got criticized by a fake brother. There's no self-profession to become a brother. We spent 4 years in formation, and you're not going to want to do if you're just wanting to get some name or reputation because there is no school of demonology, that really give you a real certificate, and it won't be a priest who does it, or even a brother for that matter. Unless we started up again. That they look for that in validation, but these things filter the people out. When you have to go through formation of such level, and you've got to go through there, and you get basically tested, you're subjected to the opinions of your peers. So they wonder if you're ready, or if you should wait longer, or if you should even continue your Franciscan walk. But I think it would weed it out. I think if there was some sort of like standard out there, we talked about this a long time ago, on some of these websites and so forth, as a group, a collective, like someone to come up with a standard, because everybody's using these terms and they got all sorts of mixed bag of tricks and very little experience or something. But the coming out of the coma thing, I mentioned that in the first book, and I was talking about it as that something happened when they died and they came back, and we tried to narrow down that a little bit. And when they woke up out and came out of a coma, or they came out of a anesthesia, they acted possessed, and they had abnormal human strength. They act like an animal, and you got to wonder why. And the person doesn't remember it, and they never seen anybody. They didn't see them act like that when they're mad, they're mild, and that sort of thing. So you got to wonder, is there some spiritual element in that? So we've seen, heard, and read about enough cases that we said, go and renew your baptismal vows. Have the priest do another blessing of the sick. Something to sort of renew you and clear you. And then this fake brother attacks me, and he bought my book, and he bought the Underground edition, which is printed off the printer before it got published back in whatever it was, 2007. And he criticized me. He says against the catechism and get baptized a second time. I used that word rebaptized because I couldn't think of it, and then later on I said baptism renewal, and he didn't even mention that. It's just like he's like the fake news or something. that taking me out of context. Good grief, man. And then he's putting it up all over. And guess what? He even wrote it on my Amazon review. He wrote it right in there and gave me 1 star. Nobody gave me 1 star, even though it has spelling errors and stuff in there because I didn't get it edited. The original book, as she was going by. He didn't criticize that at all, and that's the only thing he can find in the whole book that he had a problem with. Well, I proved him wrong, and he deleted all his sub-comments, the comments that were attached to the original review. And I tried to call Amazon, and I talked to them 3 times, and they act like they couldn't remove it. And I said, why? I said, here, look at the page. I said, pull my book out of your shelf or wherever you got it in the warehouse. And I'll tell you, see the say where he says page? Do you notice that page is non-existent? Because he's reading from a different book. I even proved that it was a different book he was reading from, and they just still didn't take it down. It's like they're not eBay. Where eBay will say, well, that's your opinion, leave it up, and you find out some people think that you're selling a counterfeit or that your item is so horribly packed and everything, and it wasn't you, it was their customs department that tore it open and stuff like that over in their country. And they start criticizing you. Sometimes you can get eBay to remove that, but sometimes eBay says, well, that's just your opinion. It won't, it shouldn't affect your story anyway, so you got to go to high rating or something like that. But I don't know, just don't get me started on that. I don't want to turn the show into a rant on another topic.
All right, we have another question, Ken. We won't get you started.
Yeah.
Okay. Do all demons bind to the foot of the cross in Jesus' name equally?
No, because it depends on who does the authority of it. We don't. Some of them we don't have the authority. Even in the Bible, when Jesus said this one will take much prayer and fasting, that when the person in his free will or generational line may have committed him, satanically or something, like they can do, parents can do that when they're babies in the womb still, that it might cause so much of embedding that just to do it equally with the same person would be the same that, hey, I can say the Roman ritual and they're gone every time. We're talking to one of our exorcists on the other end of the country about a case that he was working on, and he says it does seem like the person is too much into the idea that the spirit is kind of a symbiont. It's more part of them, and then you struggle big time. So when you take the psychological and the spiritual health of the person and individual, and then whatever possible soul wounds they have, from whatever past experiences, and then their free will choice, and then when you get beyond those kind of things, you go to who's doing the ritual. The priest. Is it just a regular priest? If he's appointed by the bishop, that's one of the things in the Catholic Catechism. Here again with the terminology. There's a name of terminology. I should carry around a little booklet that just has the terminology in or something. But I'm learning a bunch of different stuff, and I'm trying to beef up on C++, and I just don't, all the rules and stuff in here. It's like I'm not going to do one thing at a time. I don't know. That the bishop allocates his powers. One of his powers, so to speak, is his things that's given to him automatically when he's consecrated a bishop. He allocates that to the appointed priest. So the priest is actually acting as a bishop in that sense of being an exorcist, like our exorcist here. And so he gets the power of the bishop in that sense of driving out demons. Now his thing will be more potent. No one's will be as potent as Jesus was. The priests are like the apostles in that. And if they're pious and everything, they should just be like the apostles, just exactly like that. A lot of the examples in the Bible were for learning purposes. So Jesus, in his grand plan from heaven, all of those things, and they were trying to show us lessons. So it's not really the average when the apostles, you say, hey, there was 7 demoniacs expelled by either apostles or demons in the whole book. I don't know how many there were, but I can't recall. But the fact is, you can't use that as an average. They use every one of those as examples. So you might say the average time that it's going to take several sessions, depending on how bad and nasty it is. But in other cases, somebody like us, might get it done. But I'm not really sure if I'm actually binding them at the foot of the cross of Jesus. Is that we're not ordained, but we're professed, and we are appointed through the bishop's office, so that gives us something extra than, say, lady. So we have 2 levels that a regular, lady would have, and I still can't, I don't think that we would have the authority to bind him at the cross, but I'm going to say it anyway as an intention, and I would never know until the day I die on that one, I think, because they only address it with the priest.
Can we take another question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Tony writes, I have another question. I'm 23 years old. How do I help others with deliverance and work with my diocese? I have a lot to learn. Where would I start?
The best things you can do is get the right books, but possession should be something you touch later, because that one's the one that messes your life up really bad. There's a team that went through, I think, their first possession, because sometimes people act possessed and they're not, like that on that show Paranormal State, and there's this gal, that episode was called I Am Six. I watched the first one, I think, oh, this is laughable. The most she is, she's just like just has a sex issue or something or whatever, but a lot of churches call it possession, and it's not. It's laughable. It's drama or something like that. And even a mailman could probably expel it. And you can test them, and they won't react the way they should. One of our friends, who seems to be retired, did this one thing where he pretended to speak, in another language, a prayer of deliverance, and the person went, stuff like that. And he said, he's like, because he knows he's not speaking some real language. So that person shouldn't have been doing that. We used fake relic and gave the impression, just want to see what happened. Now, the demon could be doing it anyway because it's trying to confuse us. But the point is possessions, isn't that one case I was telling you, was that they went to this case, the colleague, assistant, and we'll just say deliverance priest, he wasn't appointed by his bishop to go further. And the person was sitting in a chair when they got there, one of those easy chairs. And they peed in the chair right when they got there, and they did some prayers, and some symptoms started showing up of true possession, with the face contorting and that kind of thing, and the changing, and the eyes don't roll back in their heads as much as you think, like right, and they'll look at you like that, and they're awake. They go into some catatonic state, and that's what had happened. You lift your eyelids, and that rolled back eye thing. I don't know. I don't know if you saw that or not, Deb. I should ask you what his face looked like, but I don't like to bring up the scarred past either too much and exploit your wonderful presence here. But anyway. Yeah.
Well, I hear you're going to have a fantastic show next week.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that. And remind me, right before we close out with our little magical music.
It'll be a show no one's ever heard, ever.
Well, just in small samples, and I do mean small. The whole show will just be about cases that we experienced before and after being together as husband and wife. Some cases that go further back. We're not mentioning anything that we dealt with personally, which is the book in itself, but it was a training ground, School of Hard Knocks, to have to find out the hard way. Crucifixes, not crosses. Anyway, the case rubbed off on them too bad way. Had bad luck in a large series. It's usually really noticeable inside of a week. Getting in a car wreck. 3 family members got in a car wreck in the same month. And they didn't expect this, because you got to tell them, hey, you got retaliation going on. You got payback. This is what you got to avoid. You got to get you boned up in your prayer life. You got to get a spiritual director and talk to them, and they can kind of guide you along as to when you're ready. Most of the time, I'd say over 30. Would be the safe time to actually be involved. But the priest and whoever you end up working with, if they see you're particularly pious, they might have you, travel and assist to some degree. And if it rubs you the wrong way, then you should quit immediately. And in the meantime, you can read, but you're going to have to pray for protection. As soon as they know you're taking up arms for future, I put a warning in the beginning of my first book on something like that. That basically tells the people that your life is about to change. Hold on. Something else can't necessarily drink in a commercial. Your life's about to change, so they're going to go after you because they know you're preparing for the battle. You're not preparing unhealthily a curiosity that could lead to some sort of hybrid of occultism, Catholic, or anything neo-pagan, where they're going in the right direction in their opinion. But when you go to the direction where you're going to be a threat to them, they're going to let you know about it, and they're going to try to scare you off of it through nightmares, shadow visits to the bed. And you got to be prepared for that and get the prayers, and you can do the daily prayers of protection. Start them right away once you start your studies. Now, I know people can't just pick the specialist. God's got to pick you. He's got to pick your specialty, or it's not going to work usually. And I can say especially sometimes you don't even know that you should deal with sitting in on possessions until on ritual, the actual ritual, until you've actually got everything else in place. And you might be an investigator. You might be helping to psychologically evaluate if you have a background on that. You might be a prayer warrior where you don't even show up in a site. instead of praying on the site with the exorcism going on in the room at the same time or anything like that. And part of it, the payback is the thing you'll know back right away. And you got to watch out for the long-term payback, because that can go on. And remember, Deb, you had a Ouija board experiences, and then your brother's possessed 10 years later?
I know.
That was patience. But they knew they had it. I'm going to play that card, but I'm ready. I'll take them all down at once. That's
Exactly. They've got all the time they need.
Yeah. So
they're not going to strike you the next day or 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
They're going to wait until you forget all about it, or when you're at your low peak.
And that's the sad part. It hits you when you're down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kick them when you're down.
That's the best time to do it.
The books and all those things is stay with the books. I mean, our books and all that stuff, we actually mixed some of the experiences like with that you would read on cases that were done more by teams that more investigated as to the why, answering all the questions, who, what, where, when, and how and why. And person, place, or thing, we add those two things in there in the investigation. It's very simplified. You can read our books, CatholicDemonologist.org, and just go to swordtostmichael.org. I hope I have all the PayPal links updated. It's also on Amazon, but we signed the other ones. I'm getting ready to put the ebooks up on the ones that aren't the handbooks. We have 6 books out, and the last one's still hand published right off the printer. We haven't had time to go over it one last time and then send it to the editor. I was even thinking of releasing it temporarily on PDF. Amazon Kindle, and then getting it published and then removing it off Amazon Kindle for $9.99, something in that neighborhood. Gabriel Amar's books, An Exorcist Tells a Story, even the last one, and the one that's called An Interview with an Exorcist, I think. I think the guy who interviewed him was Nicky so-and-so, Italian guy. Those are really good, but they'll talk more about possessions than the first two, which are very enlightening, and it's the best ones out there. And then he gets into, finally, and I'm glad he did, the activity of houses and objects that affect this world and demonics, where there is no possession present, although those things can happen around a possession. And some we'll just skip over to Father Chad. If you're wanted to do the psychological stuff, he's a PhD psychologist, a theology theologian, and I think a philosophy PhD. I'm not sure. I might be thinking of Father Dennis in town here, who also has 3 NOs. He doesn't believe. He's passed away. He wasn't a spiritual warfare guy per se. What a waste. And he was a Benedictine too. He always blessed our Saint Benedict. So never asked any questions. Well, I think we got to get with the show. You can ask more questions related to this. So you can get in touch with us and help you make your discernment path. We didn't know we're supposed to. I refrained from doing people deliverances until we got stuck doing it twice in the same convention, and these people were definitely oppressed. They weren't possessed, but it was a major oppression. All the symptoms were there. They even had a sign of departure. I didn't even tell them that was going to happen. A dry heave and a stab in the gut feeling. Another person had a stab in the kidney. But that was when I realized that we just got to find our parameters. I asked God, what should our parameters? How far should we go before we have to get a priest? We have to pray for each one. We did minor rites, consisting of different set of prayers, probably what you might expect, instead of just flat out doing the Leo XIII. Full possession. People were kicking 300-pound men off. And that was a horrific one. We're going to talk about that one next week, among other ones, and it's going to be a good show, definitely. The time is so much past. It's actually 15 minutes after now, Deb. So
we're at the top of the hour.
I hope everybody will take note of this and spread it around, because we wanted to lure more people from other countries who can only attend, say on the weekend because they're not coming out of work. But then again, I got to go to bed early because I got to get to work the next day. We might lose another half of it on the later side, huh, Deb? All right. Well, God bless everybody.
I want to say good night and God bless.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pop in the chat room after I sign off here. But everybody, we'll be back just as normal next week, except we'll be simulcasting on that new, it's a podcast internet. We did the FM thing before, but that's kind of fussy. Some people just don't, cling to it. This is for the people who seek a higher study and knowledge and information, whatever. Oh, yeah, check out the Father Chad Rippiger videos to the guy who asked the last question. It's an awful lot to digest. He talks fast. He gives a lot of things, but so do we. This is the generation of the educators now. All right. Good night, Deb. Glad that you were able to make it. I'd be all by my solo here. check out for some other videos that we're calling The Art of the Deals. It's of course, those are initial ones are going to be on spiritual warfare. But since I got a lot of things I can do, I might do some things on other topics. But check them out. Probably one I'm going to probably put up tomorrow or Tuesday at the latest. All right, here we go. God bless. Good night. Don't eat too much gravy leftovers. Or Thanksgiving turkey or mashed potatoes. The Real Deal TV show, copyright 2018, a Swords of St. Michael production. Any unauthorized duplication or rebroadcast or retransmission of this broadcast without the express written permission of the Swords of the Saint Network or that of Kenneth and Rose Deel is strictly prohibited.